The morning sun cast long shadows across the Fort Bragg training compound as Maya Chen adjusted her rucksack for the third time. The weight distribution wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. Around her, 47 other candidates moved with the same nervous energy that preceded the unknown. Most of them towered over her 5'4" frame, their shoulders broad enough to eclipse her entirely when they stood too close. She had grown accustomed to being the smallest person in any room, but here, surrounded by the elite of the elite, the difference felt more pronounced than usual. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The selection and assessment course for Delta Force was legendary. In military circles, stories circulated like folklore about the psychological warfare, the physical impossibilities, the candidates who simply vanished in the middle of the night without explanation. Maya had heard them all during her 8 years as a military intelligence officer, whispered in mess halls and shared during late-night conversations in overseas deployments. She had never imagined she would be standing here herself, clipboard in hand, about to attempt what many considered the most grueling military selection process in existence. The briefing room buzzed with subdued conversation as candidates filed in for their initial orientation. Maya chose a seat in the back corner, her movement deliberate and unremarkable. She had learned long ago that drawing attention too early, in any military setting, rarely worked in her favor. The men around her discussed their previous assignments in hushed tones, trading stories of Ranger School, Special Forces deployments, and combat operations that read like action movie scripts. She listened without contributing, her notebook open, but her pen still. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez entered with the kind of presence that commanded immediate silence. His uniform was immaculate, his posture rigid, and his eyes moved across the room with the calculated assessment of someone who had seen thousands of hopefuls come and go. Maya had researched him extensively before arriving. 12 years with Delta Force, multiple deployments to classified locations, and a reputation for breaking candidates who thought they understood what elite meant. He was exactly the kind of instructor who would dismiss her before she had a chance to prove herself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rodriguez began, though his eyes lingered on Maya when he said the word ladies. "You are here because someone in your chain of command believes you possess the qualities necessary for special operations. That someone was wrong about most of you." The room remained perfectly still. Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with being singled out, even indirectly. She had been the only woman in her military intelligence unit for 3 years, the only woman in her advanced interrogation course, and the only woman in her tactical leadership program. The pattern was so consistent that she had stopped expecting anything different. "This course will test every aspect of your mental, physical, and psychological resilience," Rodriguez continued. "The attrition rate is approximately 90%. The majority of you will be gone within the first week. The rest will leave sometime after that, and only a handful will reach the final phase. Of those, even fewer will be selected for the unit." Maya's pen moved across her notebook, capturing not just the words but the inflection, the emphasis, the way Rodriguez's eyes swept the room. She had developed this habit during her intelligence training, recognizing that the most important information often lived in the spaces between official statements. What Rodriguez wasn't saying was as significant as what he was. "Your backgrounds vary," Rodriguez said, beginning to pace. "Rangers, Special Forces, SEALs, Force Recon, military intelligence." His pause before the last designation was barely perceptible, but Maya caught it. "Some of you have combat experience. Others have spent your careers behind desks, analyzing data and writing reports." Maya's pen stopped moving. The comment was directed at her, though Rodriguez hadn't looked in her direction. She had expected this. Intelligence officers were often viewed as support personnel by the combat arms community, despite the fact that her job had taken her into hostile territory more times than she could count. The assumption was that she lacked the physical capability and mental toughness required for direct action operations. "Your previous accomplishments mean nothing here," Rodriguez continued. "Your rank means nothing. Your connections mean nothing. What matters is your ability to perform under conditions that will push you beyond what you believe is possible." Maya glanced around the room, taking inventory of her competition. The man to her left was easily 6'6" with the kind of muscular build that suggested years of dedicated weight training. His notebook was closed, his posture relaxed, as if he had already decided the briefing was beneath his attention. Behind him sat a Navy SEAL whose reputation Maya recognized from joint operations briefings. His presence here meant he was either exceptionally skilled or exceptionally connected, possibly both. The demographic composition of the room told its own story. 47 men, 1 woman. Most were between 25 and 35, though a few gray-haired veterans suggested that experience could sometimes compensate for youth. The majority were white, with a handful of Black, Hispanic, and Asian candidates scattered throughout. Maya was the only Asian woman, a distinction that felt both invisible and glaringly obvious depending on the context. "Your first exercise begins in 30 minutes, Rodriguez announced. "You will be divided into teams of 4 and given a navigation problem. The objective is simple: reach the designated checkpoint using only a map and compass. No GPS, no cell phones, no electronic devices of any kind. The terrain is challenging, the weather is unpredictable, and the time limit is non-negotiable." Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded any test. Navigation had been one of her strongest subjects during officer candidate school, and she had refined her skills during numerous field exercises throughout her career. The intellectual challenge of reading terrain, calculating distances, and accounting for variables like weather and elevation changes had always appealed to her systematic approach to problem solving. "Team assignments are posted on the bulletin board," Rodriguez said. "You have 5 minutes to locate your teammates and review your materials. After that, we move to the starting point." The rush toward the bulletin board was immediate and chaotic. Maya hung back, allowing the crowd to thin before approaching. She had learned that being trampled in the initial surge rarely provided any advantage, and the few extra seconds of patience often revealed more useful information than the first frantic glance. When she finally reached the board, she scanned the list until she found her name. Team Delta: Maya Chen, Marcus Thompson, David Kim, and Jason Rodriguez. The irony of being assigned to a team called Delta was not lost on her, though she doubted anyone else would appreciate the coincidence. Marcus Thompson was easy to identify. He stood near the windows, his height making him visible from across the room. His uniform bore the distinctive tab of the 75th Ranger Regiment, and his posture suggested the kind of confidence that came from extensive combat experience. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya approached him directly, extending her hand in introduction. "Marcus Thompson," he said, his grip firm but not aggressive. "Heard you're our intelligence officer." "Maya Chen," she replied. "Looking forward to working with you." Marcus nodded, his expression neutral. "Dave Kim should be around here somewhere. Navy background, I think. And Jason Rodriguez must be the staff sergeant's nephew or something, because there's no way that's a coincidence." Maya smiled despite herself. "Probably not. Have you had a chance to look at the map?" "Not yet. Want to grab Dave and Jason and find somewhere we can spread it out?" The next few minutes were spent locating their remaining teammates and securing a corner table where they could examine their materials without interference. David Kim turned out to be a soft-spoken Navy electronics technician whose expertise in communication systems had earned him a slot in the selection process. Jason Rodriguez, despite sharing a surname with their instructor, was a Marine Force recon sergeant with no apparent family connection to the staff. Maya spread the topographic map across the table, her fingers tracing the contour lines that revealed the hidden geography of their route. The checkpoint was marked with a red circle, approximately 12 kilometers from their starting position, accessible through a series of ridges and valleys that would test both their navigation skills and their physical endurance. "Terrain looks challenging," David observed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lots of elevation changes, and these contour lines suggest some pretty steep climbs." "Nothing we can't handle," Jason replied, his tone carrying the casual confidence of someone who had spent years moving through hostile territory. "The key is maintaining a steady pace and not burning out on the uphill sections." Maya traced her finger along several possible routes, calculating distances and elevation gains for each option. "We have 3 main choices," she said. "The direct route is shortest, but involves some serious climbing. The northern route is longer, but mostly follows ridgelines. The southern route splits the difference but crosses some swampy terrain that could slow us down." Marcus leaned over the map, his expression thoughtful. "What's your recommendation?" Maya felt the weight of the question. This was her first opportunity to demonstrate her tactical thinking to teammates, who had every reason to doubt her capabilities. The temptation was to choose the most conservative option, minimizing risk and maximizing the likelihood of success. But conservative thinking wouldn't distinguish her from the other candidates, and she suspected that Rodriguez and his evaluation team were looking for something more than basic competence. "Northern route," she said finally. "It's longer in terms of distance, but the elevation profile is more manageable. We can maintain a consistent pace without burning ourselves out on steep climbs. The extra distance is offset by the time we save not having to rest and recover from exhausting ascents." The 3 men studied the map, each running their own calculations. Maya watched their faces, looking for signs of agreement or skepticism. Marcus nodded slowly, his finger tracing the route she had outlined. David appeared to be running mathematical calculations in his head, his lips moving silently as he worked through the numbers. Jason remained expressionless, his eyes fixed on the terrain features that would define their journey. "Makes sense," Marcus said finally. "What about timing? How long do you think it'll take us?" Maya had already calculated this, factoring in average walking speeds across different terrain types, elevation changes, and the additional weight of their equipment. 4 hours if we maintain a steady pace. 5 if we encounter any significant obstacles or weather changes. "Time limit?" David asked. 6 hours, Jason replied. "So we have some buffer, but not much room for error." Maya felt a small surge of confidence. Her analysis was sound, her recommendations were logical, and her teammates seemed to accept her input without question. This was exactly the kind of collaborative problem-solving she excelled at, the intersection of analytical thinking and practical application that had defined her military career. "All right, let's do it," Marcus said, folding the map carefully. "Maya, since you did the route planning, how about you navigate? I'll take point. Dave can handle communications if we need to coordinate with other teams, and Jason can watch our 6. Maya nodded, accepting the responsibility. Navigation was a critical role, one that required constant attention and decision-making throughout the exercise. It was also a role that would make her performance visible to both her teammates and the evaluators, who would undoubtedly be monitoring their progress. The starting point was a large field behind the main training facility, marked with orange cones and staffed by several instructors with clipboards. Maya recognized the setup from her previous military experiences. The instructors would be evaluating not just their ability to reach the checkpoint, but their teamwork, leadership, communication, and decision-making under pressure. Rodriguez stood at the center of the field, his voice carrying across the assembled candidates. Each team will start at 5-minute intervals. Your time begins when you cross the starting line and ends when all 4 team members reach the checkpoint. Any team that fails to arrive within the time limit will be eliminated from the course. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken. Elimination. On the first day would mean the end of her Delta Force aspirations before they had truly begun. She had invested too much time and energy preparing for this opportunity to let it slip away due to a navigation error or poor time management. Team Alpha, you're up first, Rodriguez announced. Team Bravo, you're on deck. Everyone else maintain your positions and wait for your call. Maya watched as Team Alpha crossed the starting line and disappeared into the tree line. Their movements were confident and coordinated, suggesting either extensive prior experience or exceptional natural ability. She made mental notes about their pace and formation, storing information that might prove useful during her own team's movement. Team Bravo followed 5 minutes later, their approach noticeably different from the first team. They moved more cautiously, spending additional time consulting their map and compass before committing to a direction. Maya wondered if their deliberate approach would prove more successful than Alpha's aggressive pace, or if the extra time spent planning would ultimately work against them. Team Charlie, you're up, Rodriguez called. Maya's team was Delta, which meant they would be the 4th to start. The waiting was almost worse than the actual movement, giving her mind time to cycle through potential problems and complications. She forced herself to focus on the immediate task, reviewing her route calculations and checking her equipment one final time. Marcus appeared beside her, his expression calm. You ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be, Maya replied. How about you? Been doing this stuff for years, Marcus said with a slight smile, but never with stakes quite like these. Delta Force isn't just another assignment, you know. Maya nodded, understanding the weight of his words. For Marcus, this selection represented the pinnacle of his military career, the opportunity to join the most elite special operations unit in the world. For her, it represented something even more significant, the chance to prove that her capabilities extended far beyond the narrow confines of traditional intelligence work. Team Delta, you're up, Rodriguez announced. Maya's stomach tightened as she shouldered her rucksack and checked her compass one final time. The weight of the pack was substantial but manageable, distributed evenly across her shoulders and hips. Her boots were broken in, her uniform was appropriate for the weather conditions, and her equipment was secure. From a technical standpoint, she was as prepared as possible. The emotional preparation was more complex. Maya had spent her entire military career proving herself to skeptical colleagues and superiors, who questioned whether a woman could perform at the same level as her male counterparts. She had excelled in every assignment, earned commendations for her performance in hostile environments, and consistently ranked at the top of her peer group. Yet the doubts persisted, sometimes voiced openly, more often communicated through sideways glances and subtle exclusions. Delta Force selection represented the ultimate test of those assumptions. If she could succeed here, if she could prove herself capable of meeting the same standards as the most elite male operators, then perhaps the questions would finally stop. The thought both motivated and terrified her. Remember, Marcus said, as they approached the starting line, we're a team. We succeed or fail together. Maya appreciated the sentiment, though she suspected the reality would be more complicated. Military selection processes were inherently individual competitions, regardless of the team-based exercises used for evaluation. If she struggled, she doubted her teammates would sacrifice their own chances for her benefit. The calculation was harsh but realistic. Team Delta, your time starts now, Rodriguez announced as they crossed the starting line. Maya immediately checked her compass and oriented herself toward their planned route. The tree line was approximately 100 meters ahead, marking the beginning of the actual navigation challenge. She set a steady pace, fast enough to maintain their timeline but sustainable over the long distance they would need to cover. The first kilometer passed without incident. The terrain was relatively flat, consisting of open fields and scattered groves of trees. Maya checked her position regularly, using prominent terrain features to confirm their location on the map. Her teammates fell into formation around her, Marcus taking the lead position while David and Jason flanked her on either side. The easy terrain ended abruptly at the base of the first ridge. Maya called a brief halt to recheck their position and confirm their planned route up the slope. The contour lines on the map suggested a gradual ascent, but the actual terrain appeared steeper than the topographic representation had indicated. "Looks like we've got some climbing ahead of us," Marcus observed, his breathing still steady despite the pace they had maintained. Maya studied the map more carefully, comparing the depicted terrain with what she could observe. The discrepancy was slight but potentially significant. Maps were snapshots of terrain at specific points in time, and natural changes could alter the actual conditions. She had learned to trust her eyes over her instruments when the two conflicted. "The map shows a gradual slope, but it looks steeper than that," she said. "We might need to adjust our timeline." "How much steeper?" David asked, his voice betraying the first hint of concern. Maya examined the ridge more carefully, estimating the angle and the distance they would need to climb. "Maybe 30%. More vertical than what's shown on the map. That translates to about 15 extra minutes if we maintain our current pace." "Still within our buffer," Jason observed. "But it cuts into our safety margin." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Her route planning had been based on the assumption that the map accurately represented the terrain. The discrepancy wasn't catastrophic, but it was the kind of complication that could cascade into larger problems if not managed properly. "Let's adjust our pace slightly," she decided. "Move a little faster on the flat sections to compensate for the extra time we'll need on the climbs." The ascent proved even more challenging than Maya had anticipated. The slope was not only steeper than depicted, but also more unstable, with loose rock and sandy soil that made each step treacherous. She found herself using her hands for balance more frequently than she had expected, and the additional weight of her rucksack made every movement more difficult. Marcus maintained his position at the front, but Maya could see that he was working harder than before. His breathing was deeper, and he paused more frequently to check on the rest of the team. David struggled more visibly, his shorter legs requiring more effort to navigate the rocky terrain. Jason appeared to be handling the climb better than the others, his Marine Corps training evident in his steady pace and efficient movement. Maya felt the strain in her legs and lungs, but she pushed through it. Physical discomfort was expected during selection, and her ability to perform despite fatigue would be part of her evaluation. She had spent months preparing for this moment, running with weighted packs, climbing stairs with equipment, and building the cardiovascular endurance she would need to keep up with larger, stronger candidates. The summit of the first ridge provided a welcome respite and an opportunity to reassess their position. Maya spread the map on a flat rock and used her compass to triangulate their exact location. The view from the ridge revealed the terrain ahead, including several valleys and additional ridgelines that would define the remainder of their route. "Where are we?" Marcus asked, his breathing still elevated from the climb. Maya pointed to a specific contour line on the map. "Right here. We're about 30% of the way to the checkpoint, and we're running about 10 minutes behind our planned timeline." "Can we make it up?" David asked. Maya studied the remaining route, recalculating their time estimates based on the terrain she could now observe. "The next section is mostly downhill, which should help us regain some time. After that, we have one more significant climb before the final approach to the checkpoint. What's your recommendation?" Marcus asked. Maya appreciated that he continued to defer to her navigation expertise, despite the fact that her initial estimates had proven optimistic. We increase our pace during the descent, but we need to be careful not to burn out before the final climb. It's a balancing act. The descent proved easier than the climb, though Maya was careful to maintain control over their speed. Moving too fast down steep terrain could result in injuries that would end their chances immediately. She chose a route that balanced speed with safety, following natural paths and avoiding areas where loose rock could cause falls. David's performance improved significantly on the downhill sections, his shorter stature actually providing an advantage in maintaining balance and control. Jason continued to move with the steady efficiency that characterized his approach to physical challenges. Marcus pushed the pace slightly, his competitive instincts driving him to make up for the time they had lost. Maya felt increasingly confident in her navigation as they moved through the valleys between ridgelines. The terrain matched the map more accurately at lower elevations, and she was able to confirm their position using multiple reference points. Their adjusted pace was working, and they were gradually regaining the time they had lost during the initial climb. The second major climb proved less challenging than the first, partly due to better terrain and partly due to their improved rhythm. As a team, Maya had learned to anticipate the physical demands more accurately, and her teammates had adapted their individual approaches to better complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. As they approached the final approach to the checkpoint, Maya felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. They were within the time limit, their navigation had been successful, and their team had functioned effectively despite the physical and mental challenges they had faced. But she also knew that this was only the beginning of a much longer and more demanding process. The checkpoint was located in a small clearing marked with orange flags and staffed by 2 instructors with clipboards. Maya recognized the setup as another evaluation point, where their performance would be documented and assessed. She checked her watch as they approached. 4 hours and 43 minutes, well within the 6-hour time limit. Team Delta, reporting to checkpoint, Marcus announced as they reached the designated area. One of the instructors, a master sergeant, Maya didn't recognize, consulted his clipboard and made several notations. All 4 team members present and accounted for. Time, 4 hours, 43 minutes. Any injuries or equipment failures? No, Sergeant, Marcus replied. The instructor made additional notes before looking up at Maya. You were the navigator? Yes, Sergeant, Maya replied. Route selection? Northern approach following the ridgeline to minimize elevation changes and maintain consistent pace. The instructor nodded without expression. Any deviations from your planned route? Maya considered her response carefully. Honesty was always the best policy during military evaluations, but she also wanted to demonstrate her ability to adapt to changing conditions. We encountered terrain that was slightly steeper than depicted on the map during the first climb. We adjusted our pace to compensate while maintaining the overall route plan. How much additional time? Approximately 10 minutes, which we recovered during the descent phases. The instructor made final notations on his clipboard before dismissing them. Transportation back to the base will be available in 30 minutes. Use the time to rest and prepare for this evening's activities. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction as they moved away from the checkpoint. The first challenge was complete, and her team had performed well. But she also knew that Rodriguez and his evaluation team would be looking for much more than basic competence in navigation and teamwork. The real tests were yet to come. As they waited for transportation, Maya reflected on the day's events. Her teammates had accepted her leadership and navigation without question, and her technical skills had proven adequate for the challenge. But she had also noticed the subtle dynamics that would likely become more pronounced as the selection process continued. Marcus deferred to her expertise in navigation, but clearly considered himself the team's natural leader. David was competent, but seemed to lack the aggressive confidence that characterized most special operations candidates. Jason was skilled and reliable, but maintained an emotional distance that suggested he was already calculating how to position himself for individual success. Maya understood these dynamics because she had navigated similar situations throughout her career. Military organizations were inherently hierarchical and competitive, particularly at the elite levels. Success required not just individual excellence, but also the ability to work effectively within group dynamics that were often complicated by ego, ambition, and prejudice. The transportation back to base was a large military truck that could accommodate multiple teams. Maya climbed into the back and found a seat near the rear, where she could observe the other candidates without drawing attention to herself. The conversations around her were subdued, with most people either too tired or too focused on upcoming challenges to engage in casual banter. She noticed that several teams were missing members, suggesting that the first day's activities had already resulted in some eliminations. The sight reinforced her understanding that every exercise, every interaction, and every decision was being evaluated. There would be no practice rounds or second chances. The truck arrived at the base just as the sun was beginning to set. Maya gathered her equipment and prepared to disembark, knowing that the evening would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. She had survived the first day, but survival was only the minimum requirement. To succeed in Delta Force selection, she would need to demonstrate not just competence but excellence, not just individual skill but leadership potential, not just physical capability, but mental resilience. As her feet touched the ground, Maya felt the familiar mixture of exhaustion and anticipation that had characterized her military career. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new competitors, and new opportunities to prove that the doubts about her capabilities were unfounded. The selection process was far from over, but she had taken the first step toward her goal. The barracks that evening were quiet, except for the sounds of candidates preparing their equipment and reviewing their notes. Maya sat on her bunk cleaning her boots and organizing her gear for the next day's activities. Around her, the other candidates engaged in similar rituals, each focused on their own preparations. She had learned during her intelligence training that the moments between formal activities were often as important as the activities themselves. How candidates interacted with each other, how they managed their personal preparation, and how they handled the psychological pressure of constant evaluation, all contributed to their overall assessment. Maya had chosen to maintain a low profile during these informal periods, focusing on her own preparation while observing the dynamics around her. She had noticed that some candidates formed alliances and informal networks, sharing information and providing mutual support. Others remained isolated, either by choice or due to personality conflicts with their peers. Her own position was complicated by her status as the only woman in the course. Some candidates seemed to regard her as a curiosity, others as a potential liability, and a few as a threat to their own chances of selection. Maya had learned to navigate these perceptions carefully, projecting competence without appearing threatening, demonstrating capability without seeming to seek attention. The evening briefing was conducted in the same room where they had received their initial orientation. Rodriguez stood at the front, his expression as unreadable as it had been that morning. Maya took the same seat she had occupied earlier, her notebook ready for whatever instructions or challenges he might announce. Today's navigation exercise was designed to assess your basic tactical skills and teamwork, Rodriguez began. Some of you performed adequately, others did not. Those who did not are no longer with us. Maya felt a chill at the casual way he announced the eliminations. She had suspected that some candidates had been removed from the course, but hearing it confirmed made the stakes feel more immediate and personal. Tomorrow we begin the psychological assessment phase, Rodriguez continued. You will be subjected to a series of evaluations designed to test your mental resilience, decision-making under pressure, and ability to function in high-stress environments. Some of these assessments will be conducted individually, others in groups. All of them will be challenging. Maya made notes while listening, but she was also watching Rodriguez's body language and tone. The psychological assessment phase was legendary among military personnel, known for its ability to break candidates who appeared physically and mentally strong. Maya had spent considerable time preparing for this phase, but she knew that no amount of preparation could fully simulate the actual experience. "You will be awakened at 0400 hours," Rodriguez announced. "The first assessment begins at 0500. I recommend you use the time between now and then to rest, because you will need every advantage you can get." The dismissal was abrupt, leaving the candidates to file out of the briefing room in silence. Maya returned to her bunk and began her evening routine, knowing that sleep would be essential for the challenges ahead. But as she lay in the darkness, her mind continued to race through the possibilities and complications that tomorrow might bring. She had come too far to fail now. The navigation exercise had proven that she could perform at the required level, that her teammates could accept her leadership, and that her preparation had been adequate for the challenges she faced. But the psychological assessment phase would test different aspects of her capabilities, aspects that were harder to prepare for and more difficult to predict. Maya closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, using the relaxation techniques she had learned during her intelligence training. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new pressures, and new opportunities to prove herself. She would face them with the same determination and preparation that had brought her this far. The selection process was far from over, but she had survived the first day and proven that she belonged here. The doubts that had followed her throughout her military career would continue to surface, but she was beginning to believe that they were wrong. She was not just capable of succeeding in Delta Force selection, she was ready to excel. The question was whether the selection process would recognize her potential, or whether the institutional biases that had shaped her career would continue to limit her opportunities. As sleep finally claimed her, Maya's last conscious thought was a determination to prove that she belonged among the elite, that her capabilities extended far beyond what anyone had imagined, and that the assumptions about her limitations were about to be shattered. Tomorrow would be another step toward that goal, and she would be ready. The digital clock above Maya's bunk read 0347 when her eyes opened without the aid of an alarm. 3 years of intelligence operations in contested territories had trained her internal clock to wake her before any external signal could disturb the silence. Around her, 41 remaining candidates shifted restlessly in their sleep, their breathing patterns revealing various stages of anxiety and exhaustion. Maya had counted the empty bunks when she returned from the evening briefing, noting which faces would no longer appear at morning formation. She moved with practiced silence toward the communal bathroom, her bare feet making no sound against the cold linoleum floor. The fluorescent lights activated automatically, casting harsh shadows across the institutional space. Maya stared at her reflection in the mirror above the sink, taking inventory of the subtle changes that 18 hours of selection had already produced. Her eyes appeared slightly more alert, her posture marginally more guarded, and her expression carried the focused intensity that emerged during high-stakes operations. The psychological assessment phase would begin in 73 minutes. Maya had researched every available detail about this portion of the selection process during her months of preparation. Former candidates who had been eliminated spoke in whispers about isolation chambers, stress positions, and interrogation techniques designed to break down mental barriers. Those who had successfully completed the course remained silent about the specifics, bound by security classifications and an unspoken code that protected the integrity of the selection process. Maya returned to her bunk and began her morning routine with mechanical precision. Equipment inspection, uniform preparation, mental rehearsal of potential scenarios, and a brief meditation sequence she had developed during her deployment to Afghanistan. Each action served a dual purpose: practical preparation and psychological conditioning. By the time the official wake-up call echoed through the barracks, Maya was fully dressed and mentally prepared for whatever challenges awaited. The formation outside the barracks revealed the true scope of the previous day's eliminations. 6 candidates had disappeared during the night, their absence marked only by empty spaces in the ranks. Maya recognized the pattern from other military selection processes she had observed. The attrition rate was deliberately severe during the early phases, designed to remove candidates who lacked either the basic competencies or the mental resilience required for special operations. Rodriguez appeared at precisely 0500, his uniform immaculate despite the early hour. Maya had learned to read the subtle signals in his posture and expression, indicators that revealed his assessment of the group's readiness and potential. This morning, his stance suggested cautious optimism mixed with professional skepticism. The real challenges were about to begin. The psychological assessment phase consists of 4 primary components, Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying clearly across the formation: individual stress evaluation, group problem solving under pressure, leadership assessment during crisis scenarios, and psychological profiling through standardized testing. Each component is designed to reveal aspects of your personality and capabilities that cannot be measured through physical challenges alone. Maya absorbed every word while simultaneously observing the reactions of her fellow candidates. Some maintained perfect military bearing, their faces expressionless masks that revealed nothing about their internal state. Others displayed subtle signs of nervousness, shifted weight, clenched jaws, or slightly elevated breathing patterns. Maya filed these observations away, understanding that her competitor's psychological state could become tactically relevant during group exercises. The first assessment begins immediately, Rodriguez continued. Candidates will be called individually to report to different locations around the base. Your name will be announced, and you will have 60 seconds to report to the designated building. Any candidate who fails to report within the time limit will be eliminated. Maya felt her pulse quicken slightly, a natural physiological response to the announcement of imminent evaluation. She had learned to embrace these moments of heightened alertness rather than fighting them, using the increased focus and energy to enhance her performance. The key was maintaining control while allowing the adrenaline to sharpen her mental acuity. Chun Maya, Building 7, Room 205. Your time starts now. Maya stepped forward immediately, her movement crisp and confident. Building 7 was located approximately 400 meters from their current position, requiring a brisk walk to reach the designated room within the time limit. She had memorized the base layout during her pre-arrival reconnaissance, understanding that knowledge of the terrain could provide tactical advantages during various phases of the selection process. The building was a standard military administrative structure, characterized by long corridors lined with identical doors and minimal natural lighting. Maya located room 205 on the second floor and knocked twice before entering. The space was smaller than she had expected, containing only a metal desk, 2 chairs, and a video camera mounted on a tripod in the corner. A woman in civilian clothes sat behind the desk, her appearance professional but unremarkable. Maya estimated her age at approximately 45, with graying hair pulled back in a conservative style and wire-rimmed glasses that suggested academic rather than military background. Her posture was relaxed but alert, the stance of someone comfortable with conducting psychological evaluations. "Please have a seat," the woman said, gesturing toward the chair opposite the desk. "My name is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I'm a clinical psychologist contracted by the military to conduct personality assessments for special operations candidates." Maya sat down and automatically assumed an attentive posture, her hands resting lightly on her knees and her eyes focused on Dr. Mitchell's Face. She had undergone similar evaluations during her initial intelligence training, though the stakes had been considerably lower. This assessment could determine whether her military career continued along its current trajectory or took a dramatically different direction. This conversation is being recorded for quality assurance purposes, Dr. Mitchell continued, nodding toward the camera. Everything we discuss will remain confidential within the appropriate military channels. I want you to understand that there are no right or wrong answers to the questions I'll be asking. I'm interested in understanding your thought processes, motivations, and psychological framework. Maya nodded, recognizing the standard introduction used in military psychological assessments. The emphasis on confidentiality and the absence of correct answers was designed to encourage honest responses, though Maya understood that every word would be analyzed for insights into her psychological profile and suitability for special operations. Let's begin with some background questions, Dr. Mitchell said, consulting a tablet in front of her. Tell me about your decision to pursue Delta Force selection. What motivated you to seek this opportunity? Maya had anticipated this question and prepared her response carefully. The truth was complex, involving professional ambition, personal validation, and a desire to challenge institutional assumptions about women in combat roles. But she needed to frame her answer in terms that would resonate with the military's operational priorities. I believe my skills and experience in intelligence operations would be valuable additions to Delta Force's capabilities, Maya replied. I've spent 8 years developing expertise in threat assessment, cultural analysis, and information gathering in hostile environments. These skills complement the direct action capabilities that Delta Force is known for, and I want to contribute to the unit's mission effectiveness. Dr. Mitchell made notes on her tablet without changing expression. That's a very professional response. But I'm interested in the personal motivations as well. What drives you individually to seek this level of challenge and responsibility? Maya paused, recognizing that the psychologist was probing for deeper psychological insights. The question required a more personal response while still maintaining the professional framework expected in military settings. She decided to reveal a calculated amount of vulnerability while emphasizing themes that aligned with special operations. Values. I've always been drawn to challenging situations where success requires both individual excellence and team collaboration, Maya said. Throughout my career, I've sought opportunities to test my capabilities against the highest standards. Delta Force represents the ultimate expression of those standards in the military context. Have you ever failed at something important to you? Dr. Mitchell asked, her tone remaining neutral and professional. The question struck closer to Maya's personal experiences than she had expected. She had indeed failed at several significant challenges throughout her life, including her first attempt at Ranger School and a classified intelligence operation in Syria that had resulted in the loss of valuable assets. But discussing failure during a selection process required careful consideration of how such admissions might be interpreted. Yes, Maya replied honestly. I failed my first attempt at Ranger School due to inadequate physical preparation and overconfidence in my abilities. The experience taught me the importance of thorough preparation and realistic self-assessment. I used that knowledge to succeed on my second attempt and have applied those lessons to every subsequent challenge. Dr. Mitchell continued making notes, her expression remaining professionally neutral. How did you handle that failure emotionally? What was your internal response? Maya recognized that the psychologist was exploring her resilience and ability to recover from setbacks. These characteristics were crucial for special operations personnel, who often face situations where initial plans failed and rapid adaptation was necessary for survival and mission success. Initially, I experienced disappointment and self-doubt, Maya admitted. But I channeled those emotions into motivation for improvement. I analyzed my preparation methods, identified specific deficiencies, and developed a more comprehensive training program. The failure became a learning opportunity that ultimately made me more capable. Tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult decision under pressure, Dr. Mitchell continued. Specifically, a situation where there was no clearly correct choice and the consequences were significant. Maya immediately thought of an incident during her deployment to Afghanistan, where she had been forced to choose between protecting her source's identity and providing intelligence that could prevent an attack on American forces. The decision had required weighing competing loyalties and accepting that any choice would involve significant risks. During my deployment to Afghanistan, I received intelligence from a local source about a planned attack on a coalition convoy, Maya began. The information was credible, but acting on it would have revealed the source's identity to hostile forces, potentially resulting in his death. I had to choose between saving American lives and protecting someone who had risked everything to help us. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward slightly, her interest clearly engaged. What did you decide, and how did you reach that decision? I found a way to provide the intelligence without directly compromising the source, Maya explained. I arranged for the information to appear to come from electronic surveillance rather than human intelligence. The convoy route was changed, the attack was avoided, and the source remained secure. But it required careful coordination and involved significant personal risk if the deception had been discovered. What would you have done if that solution hadn't been available? Dr. Mitchell pressed. Maya paused, recognizing that this follow-up question was testing her willingness to make hard choices when creative solutions weren't possible. Special operations often required decisions where all available options involved unacceptable costs, and personnel needed to demonstrate the mental framework for handling such situations. I would have provided the intelligence and taken every possible measure to protect the source afterward, Maya said finally. The immediate threat to American lives would have taken priority, but I would have accepted responsibility for finding ways to mitigate the consequences for the source. Dr. Mitchell continued the assessment for another 45 minutes, exploring Maya's leadership philosophy, her approach to team dynamics, her methods for managing stress, and her long-term career aspirations. The questions were designed to reveal psychological patterns and personality, traits that might not be apparent through observation or performance evaluation alone. Maya answered each question as honestly as possible, while maintaining awareness of how her responses might be interpreted. She avoided responses that suggested psychological instability, excessive aggression, or inability to work within military hierarchies. But she also tried to demonstrate the independence of thought and willingness to take calculated risks that special operations required. That concludes our individual session, Dr. Mitchell announced, setting down her tablet. You'll receive instructions for the next phase of assessment when you return to the formation area. Thank you for your honest responses. Maya stood and moved toward the door, recognizing that the evaluation continued even during her departure. Her posture, her pace, and her general demeanor would all be noted and included in the psychologist's assessment. She maintained professional bearing while allowing her natural confidence to show through her movement and posture. The corridor outside room 205 was empty except for the sounds of other assessments taking place behind closed doors. Maya could hear muffled voices and occasional movement, suggesting that similar interviews were being conducted throughout the building. She wondered how her fellow candidates were handling the psychological probing, and whether any of them were struggling with questions that revealed uncomfortable truths about their motivations or capabilities. The walk back to the formation area provided time for reflection and preparation for whatever challenge would come next. Maya reviewed her performance during the interview, analyzing her responses for any statements that might be misinterpreted or reveal psychological vulnerabilities. Overall, she felt confident that she had presented herself as psychologically stable, professionally competent, and personally motivated by appropriate factors. The formation area was nearly empty when Maya arrived, with only a handful of candidates already returned from their individual assessments. She took her position in the ranks and waited, observing the expressions and body language of the others. As they gradually assembled, some appeared confident and relaxed, suggesting that their interviews had gone well or that they possessed natural psychological resilience. Others showed signs of stress or uncertainty, their posture and facial expressions revealing the strain of intensive psychological evaluation. Marcus Thompson arrived approximately 10 minutes after Maya, his expression neutral but his movement slightly more rigid than usual. Maya recognized the signs of someone who had been pushed outside their comfort zone, but was working to maintain professional composure. David Kim appeared a few minutes later, his usual quiet demeanor even more pronounced than normal. Jason Rodriguez was among the last to return, his Marine Corps bearing intact, but his eyes carrying a distant quality that suggested intense internal processing. Rodriguez appeared once all candidates had reassembled, his timing precise and his expression as unreadable as ever. Maya had learned to recognize his various moods and assessment modes, understanding that his demeanor often provided clues about the nature of upcoming challenges or his evaluation of the group's performance. "The individual assessments are complete for this phase," Rodriguez announced. "The next component involves group problem solving under controlled stress conditions. You will be divided into teams of 4 and presented with scenarios that require collaboration, creative thinking, and leadership under pressure." Maya felt a familiar surge of anticipation. Group exercises had always been among her strengths, allowing her to demonstrate her analytical capabilities while observing team dynamics and individual performance patterns. The controlled stress component suggested that the scenarios would be designed to push teams beyond their normal operational comfort zones. "Team assignments are posted on the board," Rodriguez continued. "You have 5 minutes to locate your teammates and report to your designated area. The exercise will begin immediately upon arrival." Maya moved toward the assignment board with measured urgency, avoiding the crush of candidates while ensuring she reached the information quickly enough to process it and locate her team. The assignment read, Team Charlie, Maya Chen, Robert Phillips, Anthony Martinez, Michael O'Connor. Building 4, Room 118. She immediately began scanning the formation for her new teammates, recognizing that her previous team had been dissolved and reformed for this exercise. Robert Phillips was a tall, lean man she recognized from the Special Forces community, his Ranger tab and combat infantry badge suggesting extensive field experience. Anthony Martinez appeared to be Navy, possibly SEAL based on his physical conditioning and bearing. Michael O'Connor was unknown to her, though his uniform indicated Army service with multiple deployment patches. "Team Charlie?" Maya called, as she approached the 3 men. "That's us," Robert replied, extending his hand. "Bob Phillips, 7th Special Forces Group. You must be our intel officer." "Maya Chen," she confirmed, accepting the handshake. "Nice to meet you." Anthony Martinez stepped forward, his grip firm and brief. "Tony Martinez, SEAL Team 4. Heard you navigated yesterday's exercise pretty well." "Michael O'Connor, 82nd Airborne," the 3rd man added. His handshake was slightly hesitant, and Maya noted that his eyes didn't quite meet hers directly. She filed the observation away as potentially significant during team interactions. The walk to Building 4 provided an opportunity for initial team assessment and relationship building. Maya observed the natural dynamics emerging among the 4 members, noting leadership tendencies, communication styles, and potential personality conflicts. Robert appeared to assume natural authority based on his Special Forces background and combat experience. Anthony was confident but seemed willing to collaborate rather than compete for leadership. Michael remained more reserved, his responses minimal in his body language, suggesting either shyness or uncertainty about his place in the group. "Any idea what we're walking into?" Robert asked as they approached the designated building. Probably some kind of tactical problem-solving scenario, Maya replied. They'll give us an operational situation with limited information and time. Pressure, then evaluate how we work together to develop solutions. Sounds about right, Anthony agreed. I've been through similar exercises during SEAL training. The key is usually communication and staying calm when things get complicated. Michael nodded but didn't contribute to the discussion. Maya made a mental note to find ways to encourage his participation during the exercise, understanding that team success would depend on leveraging everyone's capabilities and perspectives. Room 118 was larger than the individual assessment spaces. Configured with a central table surrounded by chairs and a large display screen mounted on one wall. 3 military personnel in unmarked uniforms sat along the far wall, clipboards and observation materials arranged in front of them. Maya recognized the setup as a standard military assessment configuration, designed to facilitate both team interaction and evaluator observation. Team Charlie, please take seats around the table, one of the evaluators announced. You will be presented with a scenario requiring immediate analysis and action planning. You have 60 minutes to develop a comprehensive solution and present your recommendations. Maya chose a seat that provided good visibility of both her teammates and the display screen, positioning herself to facilitate communication while maintaining awareness of the evaluator's perspectives. Robert sat directly across from her, his posture suggesting readiness to assume team leadership. Anthony positioned himself between Maya and Michael, possibly as a bridge between different personality types. Michael took the remaining seat, his body language still somewhat withdrawn. The display screen activated, revealing a detailed map of an urban area marked with various symbols and tactical information. Maya immediately began analyzing the visual data, recognizing the format from her intelligence training and previous operational experience. The scenario appeared to involve a hostage situation in a complex urban environment with multiple variables and constraints. Scenario briefing, the evaluator continued. American civilians are being held hostage in a compound located in the center of a hostile urban area. Local security forces are unreliable, and conventional rescue approaches have been ruled out due to political sensitivities. Your team has been tasked with developing an extraction plan that minimizes casualties while ensuring mission success. Maya felt her analytical mind immediately engage with the problem, processing the available information and beginning to identify critical factors that would influence any potential solution. The scenario was complex enough to require genuine collaboration and creative thinking, while providing multiple opportunities for leadership demonstration and technical expertise application. Additional constraints, the evaluator added. You have limited personnel resources, no direct fire support, and must operate without leaving evidence of American involvement. The hostages include women and children, and intelligence suggests that hostile forces are prepared to execute them if they detect any rescue attempt. Robert leaned forward, his special forces experience evident in his immediate grasp of the operational challenges. This is going to require a very surgical approach. No room for error. Agreed, Anthony said. We need to think outside conventional tactics, maybe something that doesn't look like a military operation at all. Maya spread a notepad in front of her and began sketching a basic analysis framework. Let's start by identifying our critical success factors, and then work backward to determine what approaches might be viable. Michael spoke for the first time since entering the room. What's the timeline? How long do we have before the situation deteriorates? Good question, Maya replied, appreciating his contribution. And what assets do we actually have available? Personnel, equipment, local contacts? Robert began asking the evaluators for additional information, his questions revealing systematic thinking about operational planning. Anthony contributed technical expertise about specialized equipment and unconventional tactics. Maya facilitated the discussion while developing analytical frameworks that helped organize their thinking. Michael gradually became more engaged, his questions and observations proving insightful despite his initial hesitancy. The team's approach evolved organically, with leadership responsibilities shifting based on the specific aspects of the problem being addressed. Robert naturally took charge of tactical planning and resource allocation. Anthony provided technical expertise about specialized equipment and unconventional approaches. Maya contributed intelligence analysis and strategic thinking about political constraints. Michael offered practical insights about urban terrain and civilian population dynamics. "I think we're looking at this wrong," Maya said after 20 minutes of discussion. "We're thinking like a military operation, but the constraints suggest we need something that appears completely civilian." "What do you mean?" Robert asked, his attention focused on her suggestion. Maya stood and moved to the whiteboard, beginning to sketch a different conceptual approach. "What if we approach this as a business transaction or humanitarian operation? Something that gives us legitimate access to the area without triggering security responses." Anthony's eyes brightened with understanding. "Like a medical emergency or infrastructure repair. Something that requires immediate access and gives us a reason to be there." "Exactly," Maya continued, her excitement building as the concept developed. "We create a scenario that draws security forces away from the compound while providing cover for the actual extraction." Michael leaned forward, his previous hesitancy replaced by engaged interest. "We could stage a chemical spill or gas leak that requires emergency evacuation of the surrounding area. That would give us access and explain why we need to move people out quickly." Robert nodded slowly, his tactical mind processing the operational implications. "That could work. We'd need the right equipment and credentials, but it addresses most of our constraint issues." The team spent the remaining time developing their concept into a detailed operational plan, with each member contributing expertise from their respective backgrounds. Maya provided intelligence assessment and risk analysis. Robert handled tactical coordination and resource requirements. Anthony contributed technical specifications for equipment and procedures. Michael offered practical insights about urban operations and civilian interface. Their final presentation was comprehensive and creative, addressing all specified constraints, while providing realistic solutions to the operational challenges. Maya felt confident that they had demonstrated effective teamwork, creative problem-solving, and individual expertise integration. But she also understood that the evaluators were assessing much more than just their final product. "Time remaining, 5 minutes," the evaluator announced. Maya looked around the table, recognizing that their preparation was as complete as possible within the given time frame. "Should we do a final review to make sure we haven't missed anything critical?" Robert nodded, assuming responsibility for the final coordination. "Maya, can you summarize the intelligence and risk factors? Anthony, cover the technical components. Michael, review the urban operations aspects. I'll handle overall tactical coordination." Each team member delivered their portion of the presentation clearly and confidently, demonstrating mastery of their respective areas while showing how their contributions integrated into the overall plan. Maya noted that the evaluators were making extensive notes and seemed particularly interested in the team's collaborative process and leadership dynamics. "Team Charlie, please remain seated while we conduct a brief evaluation discussion," the lead evaluator announced after their presentation concluded. The evaluators stepped into the hallway, leaving the team alone for approximately 10 minutes. Maya used the time to reflect on their performance and observe her teammates' reactions to the exercise. Robert appeared confident and satisfied with their work. Anthony seemed pleased with the technical aspects of their solution. Michael looked relieved that the presentation was complete, but uncertain about the evaluation outcome. "I think we did well. Robert said quietly. Good collaboration, solid solution to a complex problem. Agreed, Anthony replied. Maya, that civilian cover concept was brilliant. Really changed how we approached the whole scenario. Maya appreciated the recognition but remained focused on the evaluation process. The real test is whether they think we demonstrated the right capabilities and team dynamics. The solution itself is probably less important than how we work together to develop it. The evaluators returned and resumed their positions at the observation table. Team Charlie, your performance during this exercise has been evaluated across multiple criteria including individual expertise, collaborative effectiveness, leadership demonstration, and solution quality. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken slightly, recognizing that this moment could determine whether her selection process continued or ended. She maintained professional composure while mentally preparing for either outcome. Your team demonstrated excellent collaborative problem-solving, creative thinking under pressure, and effective integration of diverse expertise, the evaluator continued. Individual contributions were well-balanced, and leadership responsibilities were shared appropriately based on relevant experience and capabilities. Maya felt a surge of relief and satisfaction, though she remained careful not to show any visible reaction. The positive feedback suggested that her performance had met the evaluators' standards and that her team had functioned effectively despite being composed of strangers with different backgrounds. You will return to the formation area and await instructions for the next assessment component, the evaluator concluded. Thank you for your participation in this exercise. The walk back to the formation area was more relaxed than the initial movement to the assessment location. Maya's teammates seemed pleased with their performance, and the positive evaluation had created a sense of shared accomplishment. But Maya remained focused on the bigger picture, understanding that this was only one component of a much larger assessment process. That went better than I expected, Michael said. His confidence noticeably improved from the beginning of the exercise. You did great, Maya replied honestly. Your insights about urban operations were really valuable. Robert nodded in agreement. Everyone contributed. That's what made it work. The formation area was gradually filling with teams returning from their assessments, each group displaying various levels of confidence and satisfaction based on their experiences. Maya observed the different energy levels and team dynamics, noting which groups appeared to have functioned well together and which might have struggled with internal conflicts or communication issues. Rodriguez appeared once all teams had reassembled, his expression providing no clues about the overall evaluation results. Maya had learned to read his various moods and assessment criteria, but this afternoon his demeanor remained professionally neutral. The group problem-solving assessments are complete, Rodriguez announced. This evening, you will participate in individual stress evaluation exercises. These assessments are designed to test your psychological resilience under controlled but challenging conditions. Maya felt a familiar mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The stress evaluation component was among the most challenging aspects of the psychological assessment phase, designed to reveal how candidates responded when pushed beyond their normal comfort zones. She had prepared extensively for this component, but understood that no amount of preparation could fully simulate the actual experience. You will be called individually between 1,800 and 2,400 hours, Rodriguez continued. Until that time, you are free to rest, eat, and prepare. I recommend you use this time wisely. The dismissal provided approximately 4 hours of preparation, time before the stress evaluations began. Maya returned to her bunk and began organizing her thoughts and mental preparation routines. She had developed specific techniques for managing stress and maintaining psychological balance during challenging situations, skills that had been refined through years of intelligence operations in hostile environments. The barracks atmosphere was noticeably different from the previous evening. Candidates who had successfully completed their group assessments displayed increased confidence, while others remained uncertain about their performance or anxious about the upcoming individual evaluations. Maya maintained her usual practice of observing without directly engaging, gathering information about her competitors' psychological states and coping mechanisms. She spent an hour reviewing her personal stress management techniques, practicing breathing exercises and mental visualization routines that helped maintain focus under pressure. The remaining time was devoted to equipment maintenance, physical preparation, and mental rehearsal of potential scenarios she might encounter during the stress evaluation. The mess hall during dinner provided additional opportunities for observation and assessment. Maya noticed that some candidates had formed informal alliances and support networks, sharing information and providing mutual encouragement. Others remained isolated, either by choice or due to personality conflicts with their peers. A few appeared to be struggling with the psychological pressure, their stress levels visible in their eating patterns, conversation topics, and general demeanor. Maya chose to eat alone, focusing on proper nutrition and mental preparation rather than social interaction. She had learned during her intelligence training that maintaining psychological boundaries was essential during high-stress evaluations, and that emotional entanglements with other candidates could become tactical disadvantages if not managed carefully. Chen, Maya, report to Building 2, Room 301 at 19:15 hours. The announcement came over the barracks public address system. At 18:47 hours, providing approximately 30 minutes for final preparation. Maya gathered her personal items and made her way to the designated location, understanding that punctuality and professional bearing would be evaluated along with her psychological responses. Building 2 was located on the opposite side of the base from the previous assessment locations, requiring a walk that provided time for final mental preparation. Maya used the movement to activate her stress management routines and establish the psychological framework she would need for whatever challenges awaited. Room 301 was smaller and more austere than the previous assessment spaces, containing only a single chair positioned in the center of the room and an observation window that suggested monitoring from an adjacent space. The lighting was harsh and institutional, designed to create psychological discomfort without being overtly threatening. Maya entered the room and stood at attention, waiting for instructions from personnel she could not see but assumed were observing from the adjacent space. The silence stretched for several minutes, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and mild anxiety that she recognized as a deliberate psychological technique. "Sit down," a voice instructed through an intercom system. Maya complied, taking the chair and assuming a comfortable but alert posture. She had learned during her intelligence training that maintaining physical composure was essential for psychological resilience, and that her body language would be monitored for signs of stress or anxiety. The silence resumed, stretching for what Maya estimated to be approximately 10 minutes. She used the time to practice her breathing techniques and maintain mental focus, understanding that the prolonged uncertainty was designed to generate stress and reveal how she responded to ambiguous situations. "State your name, rank, and military occupation," the voice instructed. "Chen, Maya, Captain, Military Intelligence Officer, 35F. Why are you here?" Maya recognized the question as both literal and philosophical, requiring a response that demonstrated self-awareness and appropriate motivation. "I'm participating in Delta Force selection to test my capabilities and contribute my skills to special operations." "Do you think you're qualified for special operations?" The question carried implicit challenges about her background, her gender, and her previous military experience. Maya had anticipated this line of inquiry and prepared responses that demonstrated confidence without appearing arrogant or defensive. "I believe my skills and experience provide valuable capabilities for special operations." My performance during selection will demonstrate whether those capabilities meet Delta Force standards. The questions continued for approximately 20 minutes, exploring her motivations, her assessment of her own capabilities, her leadership philosophy, and her approach to high-stress situations. Maya answered each question honestly while maintaining awareness of how her responses might be interpreted by evaluators looking for psychological strengths and vulnerabilities. "Stand up and face the wall," the voice instructed. Maya complied, recognizing that the assessment was entering a different phase, designed to test her responses to uncomfortable or demeaning situations. She maintained military bearing while preparing mentally for whatever challenges might follow. The silence resumed, lasting for what felt like an extended period. Maya focused on her breathing and mental discipline, understanding that her ability to maintain composure during uncomfortable situations was being evaluated. The position was not physically demanding, but the psychological pressure of uncertainty and potential embarrassment required mental resilience. "Turn around and sit back down." Maya followed the instruction without hesitation, her movement crisp and professional despite the apparent arbitrariness of the commands. She had learned during her intelligence training that responding to seemingly illogical instructions with professional compliance was often more important than understanding the purpose behind specific requirements. The evaluation continued for another hour, involving a series of psychological tests, stress positions, and uncomfortable scenarios designed to reveal how she responded when pushed beyond normal operational parameters. Maya maintained her professional bearing throughout, using her stress management techniques to stay focused and composed. "This evaluation is complete," the voice announced finally. "Return to your barracks and await further instructions." Maya stood and moved toward the door, recognizing that her departure was also being evaluated. She maintained military bearing while allowing her natural confidence to show through her posture and movement. The stress evaluation had been challenging but manageable, and she felt confident that her performance had demonstrated the psychological resilience required for special operations. The walk back to the barracks provided time for reflection and decompression after the intense psychological evaluation. Maya reviewed her performance, analyzing her responses and identifying areas where she might have performed differently. Overall, she felt satisfied that she had maintained composure and demonstrated appropriate psychological stability. The barracks atmosphere that evening was subdued, with candidates returning from their stress evaluations at various times throughout the night. Maya observed the different reactions and coping mechanisms displayed by her competitors, noting which individuals appeared to have struggled with the psychological challenges and which seemed to have handled them effectively. She spent the evening reviewing her notes and preparing for the next day's activities, understanding that the psychological assessment phase was nearing completion, but that additional challenges lay ahead. The selection process was designed to be cumulative, with each phase building on previous assessments to create a comprehensive evaluation of capabilities and potential. Maya felt increasingly confident in her ability to succeed in the selection process. Her navigation skills had proven adequate for the tactical challenges. Her teamwork and leadership capabilities had been demonstrated during group exercises, and her psychological resilience had been tested through individual stress evaluation. But she also understood that the most challenging phases were yet to come, and that maintaining her current performance level would require continued focus and preparation. As she prepared for sleep, Maya reflected on the progress she had made. Since arriving at Fort Bragg, the doubts and skepticism that had followed her throughout her military career were gradually being replaced by evidence of her capabilities and potential. The selection process was providing opportunities to demonstrate skills and qualities that had been overlooked or undervalued in traditional military assignments. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. Maya was ready to face them with the same determination and preparation that had brought her this far. The psychological assessment phase had revealed her mental resilience and confirmed her suitability for special operations. Now she needed to maintain that performance while preparing for whatever tests lay ahead. The emergency klaxon pierced the pre-dawn silence at 0327 hours, jolting every remaining candidate from sleep. Maya's eyes snapped open instantly, her body already moving before her mind fully processed the sound. Around her, 28 candidates scrambled from their bunks in various states of confusion and urgency. The selection process had winnowed their numbers significantly over the past 2 weeks, leaving only those who had proven capable of meeting the relentless standards. Red emergency lighting bathed the barracks in an ominous glow as Rodriguez's voice crackled through the intercom system. Real-world emergency. Terrorist cell has taken hostages at the federal building downtown. Local authorities are requesting immediate special operations support. This is not a drill. Maya felt her pulse spike as she pulled on her gear with practiced efficiency. The timing seemed suspicious, occurring during the final phase of selection, when candidates were exhausted and psychologically stretched to their limits. But the urgency in Rodriguez's voice and the activated emergency protocols suggested this might actually be genuine. All candidates report to the briefing room immediately. Full tactical gear, weapons condition yellow, Rodriguez continued. Movement in 60 seconds. Maya grabbed her equipment and sprinted toward the briefing room alongside her fellow candidates. The chaos was controlled but intense, with everyone understanding that their response to this crisis would likely determine their final selection status. She noticed that several candidates appeared slower to react, their exhaustion from weeks of evaluation affecting their emergency response capabilities. The briefing room buzzed with nervous energy as tactical displays activated and real-time intelligence feeds streamed across multiple screens. Maya recognized the setup from actual operational briefings during her intelligence deployments, lending credibility to the scenario's authenticity. Maps of the downtown federal building complex appeared alongside hostage locations and terrorist positioning data. Rodriguez entered wearing full tactical gear, his expression grimmer than Maya had ever seen. 18 minutes ago, 6 armed terrorists seized control of the federal building's 3rd floor. They're holding approximately 30 federal employees hostage and have threatened to execute them if their demands aren't met within 4 hours. Maya studied the tactical displays while listening to Rodriguez's briefing, her intelligence training, automatically analyzing the operational environment and identifying critical factors. The building layout was complex, with multiple entry points and numerous variables that would complicate any rescue operation. The terrorist positioning suggested professional training and advanced planning. Local SWAT teams lack the specialized capabilities required for this situation, Rodriguez continued. FBI hostage rescue team is 2 hours out. We have been authorized to conduct immediate assessment and potential intervention if the situation deteriorates before HRT arrival. Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This was exactly the kind of high-stakes scenario that Delta Force existed to handle, and their performance here would demonstrate whether they possessed the capabilities required for such operations. The fact that it was occurring during selection suggested this might be the ultimate test of their readiness. Team assignments, Rodriguez announced. Alpha Team, Phillips, Martinez, Thompson, Wilson. Bravo Team, Chun, O'Connor, Jackson, Torres. Charlie Team will remain in reserve and provide overwatch support. Maya found herself assigned to Bravo Team with Michael O'Connor, whom she had worked with during previous exercises, along with 2 candidates she knew less well. Sarah Jackson was a former Marine Corps intelligence specialist, while Carlos Torres brought Navy EOD experience to the team. The combination of skills seemed deliberately chosen to provide diverse capabilities. Bravo Team will conduct building reconnaissance and develop contingency assault plans, Rodriguez continued. Alpha Team will establish perimeter security and coordinate with local authorities. Charlie Team will monitor from the command post and provide intelligence support. Maya felt a surge of anticipation mixed with apprehension. Being assigned to the reconnaissance mission meant her team would be closest to the actual threat, with responsibility for gathering critical intelligence that could determine the success or failure of any rescue operation. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes assignment she had been preparing for throughout her military career. The equipment issue was rapid and professional, with each team member receiving specialized gear appropriate for urban hostage rescue. Operations. Maya checked her weapons, communications equipment, and tactical gear with practiced efficiency, understanding that equipment failures during real operations could prove fatal for both operators and hostages. The convoy to the federal building moved through empty streets under police escort, arriving at a command post established in an adjacent parking structure. Maya could see the target building clearly from their position, its windows dark, except for the third floor where the hostages were being held. Police and FBI personnel moved with controlled urgency around multiple command vehicles. Agent Patricia Morrison from the FBI briefed them on the current situation as they established their operational position. 6 terrorists, heavily armed, professional demeanor. They've demonstrated willingness to use violence and appear to have detailed knowledge of building security systems. We have limited intelligence on their specific demands or planned escape routes. Maya absorbed every detail while studying the building layout and positioning her team for the reconnaissance mission. The federal building was a modern structure with sophisticated security systems, multiple entry points, and complex internal layouts that would challenge any assault force. The terrorists had chosen their location well. Bravo Team, your mission is to conduct close reconnaissance of the target building, Morrison continued. We need detailed intelligence on terrorist positions, hostage locations, building access points, and potential assault routes. Maintain communications and report any significant developments immediately. Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded dangerous operations as her team prepared to move toward the target building. The reconnaissance mission would require them to approach within close proximity of armed terrorists while gathering intelligence that could save lives or determine the success of any rescue attempt. Michael O'Connor assumed point position as they moved from the command post toward the federal building, his infantry background and urban operations experience making him the logical choice for navigation through the potentially hostile environment. Sarah Jackson handled communications while Carlos Torres monitored for explosive devices or booby traps. Maya coordinated the team's movement while analyzing the intelligence requirements and developing observation plans. Her role combined tactical leadership with intelligence collection, requiring her to balance immediate safety concerns with the broader operational objectives that would determine mission success. The approach to the building required careful movement through an urban environment that had been partially evacuated but still contained numerous civilians and law enforcement personnel. Maya coordinated their route to avoid detection while positioning them for optimal observation of the target building and terrorist activities. They established an observation post in an adjacent office building that provided clear sight lines to the third floor where the hostages were being held. Maya deployed her team to cover multiple angles while she focused on detailed intelligence collection using specialized optical equipment provided for the mission. Through her observation scope, Maya could see terrorist sentries positioned at third-floor windows, their weapons and equipment suggesting military training and professional preparation. The hostages appeared to be gathered in a central conference room, with terrorists maintaining overwatch positions that would complicate any assault approach. "Command Bravo Team," Maya reported through her communications headset. 6 terrorists. Confirmed, positioned in defensive formation covering all primary approach routes. Hostages appear to be consolidated in central conference room on third floor. Building security systems have been compromised, and terrorists demonstrate familiarity with internal layout. Agent Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. Copy, Bravo team. Can you identify specific assault routes that might provide tactical advantage? Maya studied the building layout more carefully, comparing the actual terrorist positions with the architectural plans they had been provided. Her intelligence training helped her identify patterns and vulnerabilities that might not be apparent to personnel with purely tactical backgrounds. Affirmative command. Service elevator on east side appears unmonitored. Maintenance access through EVAC system could provide flanking approach. Recommend simultaneous diversionary action on west side to draw terrorist attention while assault. Team approaches from east. The intelligence collection continued for 2 hours, with Maya's team providing detailed reports on terrorist activities, hostage conditions, and building vulnerabilities. The information would be critical for any rescue operation, whether conducted by their teams or the FBI hostage rescue team when they arrived. As they maintained their observation post, Maya noticed that the stress of the real-world situation was affecting her teammates differently. Michael remained calm and focused, his infantry training serving him well in the tactical environment. Sarah appeared slightly overwhelmed by the complexity and stakes of the operation. Carlos demonstrated excellent technical expertise, but seemed uncertain about his role in the broader tactical picture. Maya found herself naturally assuming leadership responsibilities, coordinating intelligence collection while providing guidance and support to her teammates. The situation required exactly the kind of multifaceted leadership that Delta Force operations demanded, combining tactical expertise with intelligence analysis and team coordination. Bravo Team Command, Morrison's voice interrupted there. Observation. Terrorist communications suggest they may be preparing to execute hostages if their demands aren't met within the next 30 minutes. We need immediate assault recommendations. Maya felt the weight of responsibility intensify as the timeline compressed. The intelligence her team had collected would now determine the approach for a high-stakes rescue operation where mistakes could result in multiple civilian deaths. She quickly reviewed their observations and formulated tactical recommendations. Command, Bravo Team recommends coordinated 3-point assault, Maya transmitted. Diversionary breach on west stairwell to draw terrorist attention. Primary assault through east service elevator. Secondary flanking approach through HVAC maintenance access. Timing critical to prevent hostage executions. Copy, Bravo Team. Alpha Team will execute diversionary action. Bravo Team will conduct primary assault through service elevator. Charlie Team will provide overwatch and coordinate with arriving HRT assets. Maya felt her heartbeat accelerate as the mission transitioned from reconnaissance to direct action. This was exactly the kind of high-stakes operation that Delta Force existed to conduct, and her team's performance would demonstrate whether they possessed the capabilities required for such missions. The movement to assault positions required careful coordination through the urban environment while maintaining communications with the command post and other teams. Maya led her team through the building's service areas, using the intelligence they had collected to avoid detection while positioning for the assault. The service elevator provided concealed access to the 3rd floor, though Maya understood that any mechanical noise could alert the terrorists to their approach. She coordinated with Alpha Team to ensure their diversionary action would coincide with Bravo Team's elevator ascent, maximizing the chances of tactical surprise. All teams command. Execute on my mark in 30 seconds, Morrison's voice crackled through their communications. Alpha Team, initiate diversionary action. Bravo Team, begin primary assault. Charlie Team, monitor and coordinate. Maya felt the familiar calm that descended during high-stakes operations as her mind focused completely on the immediate tactical requirements. Her team was positioned and ready, their equipment checked and assault plan rehearsed. The next few minutes would determine whether their intelligence collection and tactical Planning had been adequate for the complex operational environment. "Execute," Morrison commanded. The sound of Alpha Team's diversionary breach echoed through the building as Maya's team began their ascent in the service elevator. She could hear terrorist voices shouting in response to the diversion, suggesting that the tactical deception was achieving its intended effect of drawing attention away from their primary assault route. The elevator reached the third floor without detection, and Maya's team deployed into the corridor leading toward the conference room where the hostages were being held. The intelligence they had collected proved accurate, with terrorist positions matching their observations and the building layout conforming to their reconnaissance data. Maya coordinated her team's movement through hand signals, maintaining communications discipline while advancing toward the target room. Michael took point with Carlos providing explosive ordnance support, while Sarah monitored communications and provided security for their rear approach. The assault itself was swift and decisive, with Maya's team achieving tactical surprise through their flanking approach while Alpha Team's diversion drew terrorist attention. The combination of accurate intelligence, coordinated timing, and professional execution resulted in successful hostage rescue with minimal casualties. As the operation concluded and hostages were evacuated safely, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with exhaustion. Her team had performed exactly as required during a real-world crisis, demonstrating the capabilities and leadership potential that Delta Force selection was designed to identify. Rodriguez appeared as they secured the area and prepared for debriefing. His expression was serious but carried a hint of satisfaction that suggested their performance had met his expectations. "Outstanding work, Bravo Team. Your intelligence collection and assault coordination were textbook quality." Maya felt a surge of pride and relief as the immediate operational pressure dissipated. The crisis had provided exactly the kind of test that would demonstrate whether candidates possessed the real-world capabilities required for special operations, and her team's performance had proven their readiness for such responsibilities. The debriefing that followed was thorough and professional, with Maya's intelligence analysis and tactical leadership receiving particular recognition from both military and FBI personnel. The operation had demonstrated her ability to perform under the highest possible stakes while coordinating complex team activities and providing critical intelligence support. As they returned to the base that evening, Maya reflected on the significance of what had occurred. The real-world crisis had provided the ultimate test of their selection training, requiring them to apply everything they had learned under conditions where failure could result in civilian deaths and international consequences. Rodriguez assembled the remaining candidates for a final briefing that evening, his demeanor more relaxed than it had been throughout the selection process. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just completed the most challenging phase of Delta Force selection. Your performance during today's operation demonstrated the capabilities and potential we look for in special operations personnel." Maya felt her heartbeat quicken as Rodriguez prepared to announce the final selection results. After weeks of evaluation, training, and testing, this moment would determine whether her military career would take the dramatic turn she had been working toward for years. Of the 48 candidates who began this process, 6 have demonstrated the complete range of capabilities required for Delta Force operations, Rodriguez continued. Chen Maya, Phillips Robert, Martinez Anthony, O'Connor Michael, Jackson Sarah, Torres Carlos. Congratulations, you have been selected for Delta Force training. Maya felt a rush of emotion as her name was called among the successful candidates. The months of preparation, the weeks of selection, and years of building toward this opportunity had finally culminated in success. She had proven that her capabilities extended far beyond the assumptions and limitations that had defined her military career. The formal congratulations and administrative processing that followed felt surreal after the intensity of the selection process. Maya had achieved something that most military personnel could only imagine, earning acceptance into the most elite special operations unit in the world. As she prepared for the next phase of her military career, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The doubts and skepticism that had followed her throughout her service had been replaced by recognition of her capabilities and potential for leadership in the most challenging operational environments. The selection process had revealed not just her individual capabilities, but also her ability to inspire confidence and coordinate complex team operations under the highest possible stakes. She had proven that the assumptions about her limitations were unfounded, and that her potential for special operations exceeded anything her previous assignments had suggested. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter in her military career, one that would provide opportunities to apply her skills and leadership in ways she had only imagined. The selection process was complete, but the real work of becoming a Delta Force operator was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.